Hello everyone, I once again welcome you all to my YouTube channel English Vanessa. Students, in this video we are going to discuss the prose, The Bet written by Anton Chekhov, which you have in your semester 2, first unit of English syllabus. So before moving further, let us know about the author who is Anton Pavlovich Chekhov. He was a brilliant Russian short story writer and a playwright who wrote about human loneliness and frustration and about the stagnation of life in the Russia that he knew. So the short story The Bet by Anton Chekhov first appeared in 1889 in an edition of Novy Vremya, a magazine. When Chekhov was drafting the story, it was initially written under the title The Fairy Tale because it has a message in it. However, the title was changed to The Bet before publication. Now let us see the background of the story. Here the famed author Anton Chekhov wrote the short story The Bet in 1889. The short story follows the account of a banker who held a party which resulted in a life-changing bet after a discussion on the death penalty and the life in jail. The banker bet that the lawyer couldn't stay in solitary confinement for 15 years. The reward was 2 million rubles. The lawyers agree and remains confined to the banker's spare house where he has zero contact with the outside world except the company of books. The lawyer just about to finish the 15 years when the banker who doesn't have the money to pay the lawyer decided that he must kill him to avoid going bankrupt. On the night that the banker goes to kill the man, he chooses not to because he find a letter written by the lawyer saying that he no longer cares for material possession. He intends to exit the bit on his own. 5 hours before that mark of 15 years, saying that he no longer cares for material possession. He intends to exit the bit on his own. 5 hours before that mark of 15 years. It's pretty crazy, right? So, Chekhov created brilliant characters to make this story come to life. And in this lesson, we will learn about the lawyer and the banker in detail. So, let's begin the summary of this lesson. So, here, students, the short story Bet begins by describing a banker pacing about in his room one autumn night. The banker, here as described as an old man at this time, reflects upon a dinner party he hosted 15 years prior. So now this old man is going to the flashback and thinking the day when he started his bet. So in that day in the party debate had taken place on several topics. One of those topics was capital punishment versus life imprisonment. So, here in this story, some guests argued that life imprisonment was more ethical than capital punishment. But the banker disagreed. He said that life imprisonment would slowly kill a person rather than a quick death by the executioner's hand. One of the guests to adamantly disagree with him was a 25 years old lawyer who believed that it was better to live even in prison than not at all. Disagreeing with him most vehemently, the banker excitedly came up with a bet. He bet that the young lawyer $2 million that the lawyer would not last in solitary confinement for 5 years. The young lawyer here upped the stakes and argued that he could indeed, in fact, he could make it 15 years. Now the young lawyer took the bet, and the banker felt quite delighted with himself. Now, the next day, the terms of the bet were decided. The lawyer could be kept in the banker's garden in a lodge. Here in this lodge, the lawyer could not communicate verbally with the outside world and was only allowed a musical instrument, writing implement, and paper, books, wine, and cigarettes. Now, here in this cottage, the lawyer can have whatever quantities of these he wished for through the request and placed through a small window in his lodge. So the confinement was to last exactly 15 years. Now, the banker said that if the lawyer attempted to break their condition before the 15-year pass, the banker was no longer beholden to the bet. Now, on November 14, 1870, the imprisonment began. Throughout the first year, the lawyer practiced his piano at all hours of the day and night and was terribly lonely, but seemed to be getting on well. He read light books that often had a love triangle with them. The second year brought only requests for classic books, and the lawyer stopped playing the piano. However, the music began again in the lawyer's fifth year of imprisonment, and he finally requested wine, which he had forgotten before. The fifth year brought odd behavior of crawling madly on a paper before tearing it up all. His emotions were often in turmoil, as he could be heard crying more than once. By the time the sixth year rolled around, the lawyer began studying languages. In the second half, he requested so many books. He had an odd request after he considered himself quite the education linguist. The lawyer wrote the same series of lines but in his six languages and requested that an expert in each language review them. If he had done well, he requested that the banker have a shot fired in the garden so that the lawyer would know he had done well. The lawyer did well in his translation, so the banker had two shots go off in the garden to let the lawyer know. As the years go by, the lawyer reads virtually every genre under the sun. He makes his way from the lighter reading of the early years to the dense texts of the Gospel and Shakespeare. Banker by this time has gone broke due to his own recklessness and gambling. He began to worry that the lawyer bet with him will ruin him financially. The banker begins to hope against all hope that the lawyer will break his vow and lose the bet. He doesn't even feel remorse at these evil thoughts. In fact, the banker even manages to convince himself that the lawyer is getting the better end of the deal since he will still be relatively young at 40 and with the 2 million rubles relatively rich. With this in mind, the banker goes to investigate how the lawyer is doing. He finds that his prisoner is asleep at his desk, looking much older and careworn than he ever imagined him to be. After observing him for a few seconds, the banker notices a letter on the table. In it, the lawyer proclaims his intention to renounce earthly goods in favor of the spiritual blessing. Here, the lawyer deliberately, voluntarily leaving 2 million rubles. Because he has developed an intense hatred for other humans and believe that there is nothing that he or they can do ever reconcile this chasm. To prove his seriousness, the lawyer decided to leave his prison 5 hours before the appointed time and renounce his claim to the 2 million, thereby freeing the banker from his debt and from financial ruin. After reading that, the banker cries and kisses the prisoner with relief. The next day, watchmen alert the banker of the lawyer's escape, and the banker is unsurprised. He walks over, takes the letter from the lodge, and locks it in a fireproof safe. So, here, students, in the bed, Chekhov decided to analyze which is worse, life imprisonment or the capital punishment. In order to do this, he set up a bet that would likely never take place in real life. This is a fictional story, it's not real. Now, here by this story, the technically banker won the bet, but also he had learned a lesson. The lesson was the freedom is not actually what he had enjoyed in 15 years, but the real treasure is that which he has given to the lawyer, the books. And here, lawyer also learned one lesson in 15 years that when he started the bet, he was immature at the time, but as the time passed, he learned so many lessons. So, students, now here the story is ended. The story is left rather open ended with the reader left with a sense that the story hasn't finished. Chekhov may have done this on purpose to prompt the reader to thinking about the consequences of the banker and the lawyer's action. What ultimately is the fate of the lawyer? Does he live out his days happily? Is the banker able to remorse free, feeling no guilt over talking so many years away from a young, bright man? Maybe the old banker, realized the vanity and emptiness of his life. We will never know. The banker does feel some contempt for himself, but the story does not give the reader much more detail than that. It's possible that he simply forget about the lawyer in a few years' time, locking away all thoughts of him from his mind. So, students, this is all about the summary of the bet. I hope it would be helpful for you. Stay tuned for more videos and thanks for watching.